Welcome to our 12th lecture in Computer Programming 2. This is going to be the second part of our swing development lecture. This is probably, we'll finish in this lecture everything that you'll need for your programming assignment. We'll see that this will go pretty easily as a lot of this is drag and drop. To start with, I have let me go back to the right project here. I have from vehicles, the driver frame that I created in the last lecture. To create this, I simply right-click, choose New, and then JFrame. Where my JFrame go? JFrame form. If you don't see it there, choose Other, and you'll see it under Swing GUI Forms, and then again, JFrame form. Okay. Once I did that, I right-clicked and I chose Set Layout, and this will fall off the screen a bit, but then Border Layout. Remember, that gives me north, south, east, west, and center. So in the very top, I can simply drop a label, and I can right-click on, or actually, I'll tell you what, I can double-click on that label and simply change the text to car simulator. And there are properties where I can choose to center that text or do anything else, but at the moment, all I want is simply a label at the top. Now remember that the border layout has north, south, west, east, and center, and there can only be one component in each. However, that component can also be a JPanel, and a JPanel can hold other components. So if I go to Swing Containers, I can choose Panel, and I can drop a panel right in the middle, and that's where most of my input's going to go. And then I can choose Panel again, and notice, let me see if I can get a better view of this. So I'll kind of squish these guys together. Okay. Notice that it puts a little dotted line wherever I'm moving the panel to indicate that if I put it here, it's going to move it on the west. If I put it down at the bottom, it's going to put it in south. If I put it over, I'm sorry, over on the right would be east, right? The west would be south. And then if I put it down at the bottom, if I can get it just there, that will put it in south. Unfortunately, though, it didn't line up exactly as I wanted. So I can go over to the navigator view, drag it, with any luck. There we go. Drop the J panel 2 back on the J frame, and now we see this one is in south, this one is in center. So now I have a panel in both south and center, and then a label at the top. South, center, label at the top. Okay? And so if that doesn't line up exactly as you want, the best thing to do is to go over to this navigator window and make sure that your panel and your label are hung right off of JFrame, and the JFrame is a border layout. If for some reason, let's see, 1 second. Set layout for design. Okay. There is a property. I'm going to need to find this property. There is a property where you can tell, yes, that's what I want. Okay. South. That'll work. Okay. If you take a look, if you click on the J panel 2, for example, go over here and look at properties, and I'll try and move this so we can see it on our on the screen capture. You see that here you can choose north, northeast, west, south, and again that's falling off the screen a little bit. Oh shoot, it's a little tricky to get this all on the screen. I'm going to move the screen capture down. There we go. Okay, notice on direction that I can choose south, or I can choose any of the other directions that appear with a border layout. So, first thing I would do if I were you is figure out, number one, what you want to put on your layout. Okay, what do you want to put on your layout? So, what do you want to put in north? What do you want to put in center? What do you want to put in south? And by the way, I'm not going to be very nitpicky on the third assignment about layouts. It should look somewhat decent, but nesting layouts is something that takes time. It takes time to figure out how to do it right. So I'm not very concerned about that. My bigger concern is that you put all of your UI stuff in your banker frame, okay? If it doesn't look perfect, that's fine. But as long as it works, and it interacts with your existing hierarchy and your existing logic. Okay, so now here's something kind of neat. I want to focus on this panel. If I click into here, then the UI builder just shows me that center panel, and I can work in here and focus on this center panel. Now, first of all, I'm going to right click and I need to tell it which layout I want it to be. I'm going to make this a grid layout where I can specify either the number of columns or the number of rows, because what I'm going to have is a label and then a text box and then a label and a text box and so on and so forth. And these are going to be all the things that I need to set up my car. So I go to grid layout, okay, and remember we'll typically specify either columns or rows, but not both. So I'll specify columns at 2. I don't want to specify rows, so I'm going to set that to 0. And when we set rows to 0, it means I want Java to calculate the number of rows based on the number of columns that I've specified. Okay, and so here we go. Now it gets fairly easy. We just need to drop some labels and some JText fields. A label is something that is read-only. So I come over here, I drop the label, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to edit text and say type of car. Okay. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to look for the JText field or the text field, drag that and drop that. And you see, because I told it I want 2 columns, but I didn't tell it how many rows, you see it gives both of these an equal amount of real estate on this form. Now, why didn't my JLabel change? Let me try that again. Type of car. Okay, that looks better. Now, in the JText field, we don't need any text. Actually, you know what? We don't even want a text field there, actually, because that's going to be a drop-down. So let me choose a combo box, and I'm going to drop the combo box there, because we know we have a limited set of car types, and we want to show the user only the car types that are valid. So on the combo box, I'm going to change the variable name. This is one of the first things that we're going to want to do, because when we get behind the scenes, we want to know what combo box we're dealing with. And this combo box is an object stored in a variable, just like most of our other objects. So what we have an opportunity to do now is to rename that variable so that we know which one it is. So I'm going to call this CMB car types. Okay, then I'll right click again, and I'll say, well, let's see, maybe I'll go to properties. I'll click on this, and properties, I'm going to select model, and let me get this over so we can look at this a little bit better. There's the little ellipsis button, that's the button with the 3 dots. I click on that, and here I can give it a predefined list of cars. So we know we have Neon, Insight, Cavalier, and Prius. Guess I should have put those in some kind of order, but nonetheless, we'll go ahead and choose that. Okay, so now we have a drop-down box that's going to give us Neon, Cavalier, Prius, and Insight. Okay, next let's ask for gallons of gas. So I'm going to take another label, and I'm going to drop it basically here, which says, okay, put me in the next available space. Now, because I said I want a grid layout with 2 columns, when I add the third item, it puts it in a new second row. So again, the label, I'll change the label to odometer. I'm not very worried about the actual variable name for a label because I'm not going to alter the label programmatically. Anything where I am going to try to get data out of it, like a drop-down box or a text field, that I will want to change the name. Also for the text field, whoops, Control-Z that. I didn't mean to double-click. Oh, come on. I just accidentally double-clicked. Let's see if it'll let me take that out. Well, unfortunately, that part's covered. 1 second. Okay, not easily. Okay. Unfortunately, I double-clicked and I didn't mean to. So I'm going to go back to Design View. I'm going to right-click, Events, Action. You know what? I'm just going to delete this guy. Delete it, start over. Okay, text field. Now what I'm going to do is try and right-click and choose Edit Text. It puts JText field 1 in there by default. That's of no use to us. So I'm going to clear that out. That's of no use to us. Okay, now I'm going to right click and choose change variable name, and I'll call it txt odometer. And again, this is the variable name that's going to hold this object. This is the variable name that's going to hold this object, which is a text field, which is where the user is going to insert an odometer reading. So I want to rename it to be something that I will know when I'm behind the scenes programming. Okay, the next few fields will be pretty obvious. I'll take a label, drop it in this next area. Okay, edit text. We'll say miles per gallon. Okay, and then take a text box again, a text field. Right click, edit text. We'll take out the default text. Right click again, change variable name, txt miles per gallon. Again, I assure you, if you change the variable name right away, you'll be very thankful for it later. Label for our final one. Okay, right click, edit text, and we'll say gallons of gas. Okay, and then a text box, text field rather. Okay, right click, edit text, take out the default. Right click, change variable name, txt gallons of gas. And this should give us enough to create our car. So I choose save. Drag and drop, very straightforward. Now, I want to go back and see the entire J-frame because remember, we're just focused now right in the middle. We're just focused in the middle. So I'm going to go back and click on the J-frame and we're going to see where this fits within all of the other components. And what's really neat is this little guy with the eyeball here is a preview design. So we can click on this and see what our frame will look like and what happens as we resize it. And we can decide, is that what I want it to look like when it gets resized? Yeah, pretty much. And we can see our drop down has our values, Insight, Cavalier, and Prius. There we go. We could probably have a few different ways to lay this out, but I think so far that's going to be pretty good. In this layout down here, I'm going to make a button to create a car, then a button to move cars, and then a little drop down that's going to show all of our cars. Again, all of this will come across pretty quickly and easily because we're just dealing with drag and drop. So I go over and I look for the widget called button. As a matter of fact, I can double click on this and focus on it again. So I click on the button and we'll go ahead and leave this. This is what we'll call a free layout. This will be fine. So drop it there, right click, edit text, create car. Okay, right click again, change variable name, btn create car. Okay, and now let's add a text field, and you see it can kind of smartly space these things. Edit text, take all the text out. Okay, right click again, edit text, I'm sorry, edit variable name. Oh, come on, it froze up on me there. Change variable name, txt distance. So this is the distance we want to move the car. As a matter of fact, we should probably put a label between those two to say distance to move. Okay, now we can try and line these guys up a bit better. There we go. Stretch that guy out a bit. Okay, and now we'll add yet another button and line that up like so. And, oh, shoot, okay, we'll come back to that. We actually will need that, but we'll come back to it. Right click, edit text, move cars. Okay, right click, change variable name, btn move cars. Okay, one last thing to add and then we'll look at all of this together. I'm going to add another combo box, and this one I'll add down here, and we'll stretch this out and make it the width of that entire area. So you see the free layout is pretty handy. The problem is it doesn't resize well. So it's okay if it's if it's nested in part of a bigger layout that does resize well, but on its own it doesn't really resize well. We can do things like anchor it, things like that to make it a little bit nicer, but we want to stay away from absolute positioning wherever possible. So I save. And now after I save, I'm going to go back to the navigation over here. I'm going to go to my J-frame and let's see how everything looks together. Not bad. Again, I probably, I probably am going to center that a bit more. Let's take the move cars over here. Let's take the distance over here. Let's take this guy, move him over there. That will center it a little bit better. Okay. Now, one thing that we'll want to keep in mind when doing good UI design. First of all, most people think they're good at UI design, but very few people are. I read a really good book on the subject once that was all about very good UI design, and like most people, I thought I was pretty good at it. And then as I read this book and critiqued my own work, I quickly figured out that I made some vital mistakes. Notice that we use labels where we want to display read-only information. We use text boxes anytime we want to collect information from the user. We should never use a text box for read-only information because then the user is always going to wonder, what can I do to enable this, or why isn't it taking my changes? Here's a perfect example of that. Earlier on, I went here to this website to select a seat on an upcoming flight. Now I can go in here and very easily I can click around and choose different seats. But what's strange is notice that it updates this right here. It updates this little text area here. And unfortunately, that text area is editable. So on this aircraft, first class is rows 1 through 4. So it looks like I can just go ahead and assign myself a first class seat. I can type in 1A and then choose save. Okay, that's not very user friendly. And by the way, I've definitely timed out. So put in my magic number here and we'll do that again. I know it's actually been a bit of time since I was here before. So let me show that again. We have here a screen, and don't get me wrong, the seat selection screen is easy enough to see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this makes sense, so I can click around, and I'm honestly really thinking about trying to grab this seat. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Forgive me as I grab this seat. Okay, so this is how it should work. I should click on the seat and then choose save, and then what it will do is it will come back and say, okay, we've saved your seating preferences. But what's misleading about it is, I'll go back in there again, because it uses a text field as a read-only device, and even worse, as soon as I enter the page, it highlights that text field. It looks like I could just choose 11A like so, and then save. Let's see, a little tricky here. And then hit save. It looks like I would be assigned 11A at that point, but what we'll see is, no, I'm still assigned seat 12C. So that's something we try to avoid. We should only use an actual text box when we want the user to enter something. We should never use a text box to display read-only information. And we should especially never use a text box to show read-only information and then make that text box editable like this to make it look like I could just go there to change my seat assignment. So there we go. Okay, at this point we're looking pretty good. So I'm going to save, and now one major thing to look at here. Driver has a green arrow because that has a main method. So does driver frame. When you're setting up banker frame, you're going to want to right-click specifically on banker frame and click Run. Now we don't have this doing anything yet, but we can see what's going to happen when it runs. Okay, gives us an output like that, and all in all, that's actually not too bad on resizability. Okay, we're going to want to enter an odometer, miles per gallon and gallons of gas, and then we're going to want to create car. And again, nothing happened yet because we haven't wired up this button. When we hit create car, we want to see the car in this drop down here. And then when we type in a distance and say move, we want it to iterate over all of the cars, move them, and we want to see the cars updated in this drop down here. So that's what we're going to do next. Right now, everything above this line is ready to go. We just need to do our create car, our move cars, and we need to add the cars down here. Okay, so I go back to driver frame, and if I want a button to do something when it's clicked, in the driver frame, in the design view, I can simply click that button. Easy as that. When I click that button, it takes me to a method, And this is the method that will get invoked when the user clicks on that button. Okay, quite easy. So here what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to say gather information entered by the user about this car. It's his car. Try that again. Okay. First of all, remember that we renamed all those variables, and here's where it's going to pay off. What was the name of the C&B car types? There we go. C&B car types was that drop down with all the car types, and we can say get, we'll try here, let me try again. Get selected item, okay? And what I can do is I can say, let's see, that's going to return an object, isn't it? Okay. Get selected item dot toString, okay? String car type equals this dot cmb car types dot get selected item dot toString. That's going to tell us what type of car the user created, or the user wishes to create. Now, how can we use that? Because we have a string that represents what the user wishes to create. Well, some very good news here. Remember in driver, we made that factory method? Remember that factory method, create car? Remember we made it public and static. That's wonderful. Think about what that means. Public, this is in class driver. Public means it can be accessed from other classes, like driver frame. Static. Static means we don't need to make an object out of class driver to invoke this. All we need is a reference to the class. That's wonderful. So let's go back now to our driver frame, and let's invoke the static factory method we made in driver to create an object of a car based on the user's selection. Okay, so I'm going to say driver dot create car, and what am I going to pass it? Literally that string. And what's it going to return? It's going to return an object of a class that extends car. In other words, a neon, a cavalier, a Prius, or an Insight. And remember, each of those extends from car. So this factory method call here is going to work just like how it worked here in our old driver, just like this. Okay, as a matter of fact, I can go ahead and name it car my car if we want to stay consistent. Just like that. Okay, we're reusing it because it's public, so we can access it. And since it's static, we don't actually need to create an object of class driver. We can just invoke it directly on a class reference to driver. Once we have that, we can populate the car. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so let's see, we need odometer, right? How are we going to get odometer? Well, remember, we named that variable txt odometer. Okay, and then the method getText will return to us whatever text is inside odometer. String str odometer equals txt odometer getText. Now we know this story, convert to an int int odometer equals integer dot parseInt str odometer. Okay, super. Okay, and now my car dot set odometer int odometer, and the next three are going to flow just like that. String str miles per gallon. We could do these in any order really. txt miles per gallon dot get text. Okay. Let's see, miles per gallon. We wanted to do that. We could do as an int as well. Int miles per gallon equals integer dot parseInt str miles per gallon. Okay. And then finally, okay, my car dot set miles per gallon, and there we go. Okay. String str gallons of gas equals txt gallons of gas dot get text. Okay. int gallons of gas equals, I'm sorry, we want to double, don't we? Double dBl gallons of gas equals double dot parse double str gallons of gas. Of course, if we want, we could use one of those validation routines like we created before. Okay, my car dot set gallons of gas, dBl gallons of gas. Now, let's stop pretty soon at this iteration. We're going to continue more, but right now I just want to make sure that everything works so far. So let's do a JOption pane, show message dialog, this comma, car created, colon. Remember what's going to happen if I have the plus operator and on one side I have a string. If I have the plus operator, I need to organize imports here, add an import, there we go. If I have the plus operator and on one side I have a string, it's going to take the other side and convert it to a string. If I have a variable on the other side, and that variable is a variable that's holding a class, it's going to invoke the toString method on that variable. Because remember, every object, every class is going to have a toString method. We can overwrite it if we wish. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to put a breakpoint specifically on the very start of this method, and then I'm going to right click and choose debug. And let's watch what happens. Remember, the debugger is only going to pick up when it hits that breakpoint. So the program will continue to run until it hits that breakpoint. Odometer 10,000, miles per gallon 15, gallons of gas 12. Now I'm going to hit create car, and remember when I click that, it's going to jump into this method. When it jumps into this method, it's going to stop on the breakpoint, and I'm going to have control from then on. So I click create car. As soon as I do that, our Pepto-Bismol line should turn green. And there we go. Okay, and I choose F8. Now notice what we're doing. What is car type? I mouse over and it's neon. And if I want to double check, I'll look in variables and I'll see that car type is neon because that's what the user selected from that dropdown. Now what happens when I hit F7 here? Remember what F7 does. F7 says, take me into a method. And remember, create car is a static method on driver, so we don't need to create an object out of driver to invoke create car. Remember also, we're in driver frame, create car is in driver, but create car is declared public, so it can be accessed from another class. So when I choose F7, we're going to jump from driver frame to driver. F7. And here we go. Now, what's the car type that was passed in? I can mouse over and we'll see neon. And the context sensitive help is I mouse over. So it's not a Cavalier, it is a neon. It's going to create a new neon object and return that. And there we go. And now in my car we have a neon, and now we can populate it with the odometer that the user entered, the miles per gallon the user entered, and the gallons of gas. And finally we give a confirmation by issuing a pop-up. And here's what our pop-up looks like. Car created, neon, odometer 10,000, gallons of gas 12. Remember, because we put the car object, okay, appended with a concatenation operator or with a plus, it's going to invoke toString on that object, and it's going to give us this message we see here. Okay? And I will go ahead and choose F8 and tell it to continue running. I'll hit the play button. Oops, sorry. F5 will tell it to continue running. Okay, so now what do we still have to do? We still have to put this in our drop-down box here so that we can see it. We still have to enter this distance to move, and then we still have to activate that move cars button. We're at the 30-minute mark now. I'm going to bet we're going to be able to wrap that all up in about 15 more minutes. So first, let's decide what to do with these cars. I'm going to suggest that we put them in a collection so that we can perform mathematical operations on them later. I'm also going to suggest that we make them available to this dropdown. So first of all, I'm going to go to my driver frame, and this is a class just like any other. I'm going to make a couple of attributes. One is an array list to hold all cars. So array list, car, all cars equals new array list car. By the way, it was pointed out to me in Java 7, you can use the diamond operator, which is just this on the right side of the equation. But in Java 6 and 5, what I'm using, we need to go ahead and put the type on the right as well. And then we need to organize imports. Easy enough. Now, to make these cars available to the drop-down list, we need something called a default combo box model. So I'm going to say default combo box model DCMB equals new default combo box model. This is what's a part of what we call the model view controller, where we can have a model of data and we can pass it into our view. There we go. Organize imports, and we can make available objects to our view, to our dropdown dynamically. Pretty neat stuff. Let's take a look. So in driver frame, after init components, I'm going to take the drop-down box, and I'm starting to think I might not have renamed that. What did I call this drop-down box? Change variable name. I didn't rename it, so let's call it CMB all cars. Okay, and save. Back to source. Now CMB all cars dot set combo set model. That's what I want. Set model DCMB. What I'm doing is I'm telling this combo box to use the default combo box model to find its data. So I'll put a comment here. Link the DCMB with the CMB all cars so that CMB all cars will go to DCMB to find data. Okay, and there we go. After that, things are pretty straightforward. We go back down to that method where we were just working, and right after we have our confirmation, we'll say all cars dot add my car, so add it to the combo box, and then we'll say DCMB, that default combo box model, add element my car. Okay, and we're all set. So let's save this and let's run again. I'll go ahead and choose run this time. We'll just choose run. Now let's take a look at what happens. First of all, we no longer see that 1, 2, 3, 4 in this drop-down box because we've told it to use a dynamic default combo box model. Second, we'll say neon, odometer 10,000, miles per gallon 10, gallons of gas 10, and create car. We get our confirmation. And now take a look. Notice that this car appears in the drop-down. Now let's change to an insight. We'll say 15,000 miles, 15 miles per gallon, 15, well, let's say 12 gallons of gas. Create car, get our confirmation, and take a look. Now that appears in the drop-down. So the default combo box model allows us to dynamically put these into that drop-down as they are created. And the best is yet to come. Cavalier, 20,000, 20 miles per gallon, 15 gallons of gas. Prius, 25,000, 25 miles per gallon, 17 gallons of gas. Okay, and take a look. It's invoking the toString for each of these and placing that value into the drop-down box. What's really neat is we added the object directly to the drop-down box. Now we have only one more thing to go, and that is this Move Cars button here. So I close, I go back to Design, and I'm going to double-click on Move Cars, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say iterate. I'll say, well, first let's say find the distance to move and convert it to the proper data type. Okay, so what did we call, did we give a name to this text field? I forget. TXT distance. Okay, we did. Okay, so string str distance equals txt distance dot get text. Okay, int distance equals integer dot parse int str distance. And remember, if you want to do some magic and maybe validate that the user has entered proper data, we've seen how to do that before. You could certainly borrow that from one of our other programs that we put together. So there we go. Okay, and now what we're going to do is iterate over. Let me expand this so we can get a little more space here. See a little better what we're doing. Iterate over the all cars collection and move each car the specified distance. Okay, we can do this with that for each loop. Remember, that's the handy shortcut, FORE. There we go. And just like that, it's going to make a for each loop that's going to iterate over each car in the collection. And from here, we can simply say, move the car the specified distance. Okay, car.go. Remember that go method where we're using the same go method? Move it the specified distance. And with that, believe it or not, we're done. So I right click and I choose run, and let's see what happens now. Something very interesting is going to happen. Okay, neon, and we'll go ahead and set this up. 10,000 odometer, 10 miles per gallon, 10 gallons of gas. Let's make it 20 gallons of gas. It doesn't matter because we can see them all. Create car. There we go. See that? Cavalier. Let's go for 12,000 miles. 12 miles per gallon, and let's go for 22 gallons of gas. Okay, and there we go. Prius, we'll say 15,000, 15 miles per gallon, and 25 gallons of gas. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. Remember, we've added these objects directly to the combo box. And when the combo box wants to display these objects, it simply invokes toString. Now let's watch what happens when we type in 100, and I'll go ahead and set a breakpoint here. And this, we'll set a breakpoint on that class, on the method where it's going to call. Come on, where's my breakpoint? Well, while it's running, oh, okay, I haven't run, not in debug, so breakpoint wouldn't do us any good. That's okay. Let's go ahead and choose move cars and watch what happens. Take a mental image of this. As a matter of fact, I actually can take an image of this. There we go. Okay. So I just took a screen capture, and with any luck, I'll open up Paint here and paste that in. Okay, just a moment. Okay. So you see, I just pasted that screen capture, what we were looking at. Now I'm going to choose Move. Okay, now let's compare. Here's what we had before. Here's what we have after. Do you see the difference? Do you see that the drop-down box automatically updated when we moved the car 100 miles? Let's move them 100 miles again. Once again, do you see now that the drop-down box automatically updated when we move the cars another 100 miles? And how did it update? Where did we tell it to update? Where in here did we tell it to update? We don't have to. We don't have to. That's the cool part. See this, where we're adding the cars to the default combo box model? We're not adding strings. We're adding the full car object we created up here. We're adding that entire object. And this is where object-oriented is very, very powerful, object-oriented programming. Because as the state of those objects change in our button move, because the actual object is stored in the drop-down box will automatically reflect those changes. As the state of the objects change, the drop-down box will automatically reflect those changes. In the old days, what we would do is we would just get the string from the toString and place the string in the dropdown, and it would not automatically update. In new programming, in good object-oriented programming, we don't add the string to the dropdown. We add the entire object to the dropdown. Now the dropdown will call toString, but as those objects change, it will refresh automatically. It will call toString again and notice that the objects have changed. And again, we can move the cars another 100 miles if we wish, and we'll see that the object values in the dropdown automatically change. Now, I ask you, in this program, in the lectures we just went through, what classes did we change here? And the answer is we created driver frame brand new. We did not change any of the other classes. So again, if you're wondering, gosh, I've taken this accelerated course and I don't understand why we have so many classes. Now maybe you understand why. If we did this program from scratch right now, it would take probably 3-4 hours minimum. Instead, we're now at about an hour and a half worth of lecture, and the program is complete, because we reused the Car Cavalier hybrid Insight Neon and Prius that we already had using a different user interface. All we had to do was snap on a brand new Swing user interface, and we could reuse all of that logic that we had before. And why is that? Because we kept the user interface logic out of Hybrid, Insight, Neon, Prius, Car, Cavalier. All the user interface logic was in driver. So when we want to change the user interface, we simply have a new class called driver frame, and we can reuse the existing class structure between car and all of its subclasses. Or if you prefer to look at the UML, for you guys it's banker and banker frame, for me it's driver and driver frame, and then for you it's account, for me it's car, for you it's saving CD checking, for me it's Neon, Cavalier, and Prius. So we're able to reuse all of that logic in a brand new user interface. And because we were smart about making our factory a public static factory in driver, public static car, create car, we were even able to reuse that. So you see, a brand new user interface comes together very quickly, because we reused the existing method go that we have in car. We didn't need to change this. We didn't make this new. We reused it from a previous lesson. We reused the overridden go method in Prius. We reused that. We didn't have to rewrite it. Okay? This strategy takes us back to where we were a few lectures ago when I said the mobile phone operating systems and hardware makers want to make it hard for you to write a program that operates on any other device but theirs. But if we're smart about it, we can factor common logic into a set of classes that can be shared, and then keep our user interface logic or our platform dependent logic in one class that can be swapped out. So again, in this entire lecture, this lecture and the one that precedes it, the only changes I made were in driver frame. And even then, the last lecture was mostly just talking about what an interface is. This lecture is where we did all the work. And if you take out all my mindless babbling, it really was only about 20 or 30 minutes worth of work. So, if your programming assignment 1 and 2 were designed well, your programming assignment 3 should be equally simple. All you'll need to do is make a banker frame, arrange the components as you wish, and have it use your already existing other classes. That easy. So, questions for the quiz. We could talk about why it's important to rename text field and drop-down box and button variable names so that we'll know how to use them when we go behind the scenes. We could talk about the default combo box model, which puts objects directly into a drop-down box or a combo box. And then the combo box will invoke toString to get a string representation of those objects. And the combo box will also be aware of updating itself as the state of those objects change. We could talk about the different layouts: border layout, grid layout, flow layout, and free layout or absolute layout. Lots of things that we could talk about. We could talk about some of the methods that we called on text box. And as a matter of fact, if you go to the slides for this course, you'll see a lot of the things that I've been talking about, we do have slides for. So swing components, JText field, JLabel, and swing example. There's more information there that kind of reconfirms what I've been talking about in this lecture. So with that, we're at the just over the 45-minute mark. I'm going to go ahead and save this. That is all you need for programming assignment number 3. I might have a couple of smaller lectures throughout the rest of this quarter, but that is the vast majority of what we're going to cover this quarter. We'll probably have a little wrap-up lecture and maybe a couple that go over the quiz questions. But all in all, if you've reached this point, you're almost finished with lectures. Just a couple more small ones to go, but we have at this point covered all of the major material for this quarter. So thank you. These questions put on, let's say these could go on the exam or on the quiz that follows the exam, which I believe would be quiz 5. So I'll make sure that both of those quiz question suggestions are ready. So while it's fresh in your head, go ahead and write down some quiz questions. Thank you.